more gold above ground available to be used in world economies than any other resource or commodity. There is 62 years worth of gold that can be used for monetary systems to cover the whole world. You don't have to mine gold, and if you keep on the same population growth here in America and China and India, there's enough gold for 62 years already above ground. Pardon?
Who's got it?
A lot of people have it. More and more Americans are now starting to buy it. Okay? But it exists above ground. And that's the key part there. Because the bankers would like you to believe there isn't enough. But yet, the actual mining data, the historical facts, like I said, if you look at the facts that you can see from over time, how much silver was available and mined above ground, etc. Actually, silver's less available because it's used in so many electronics. So it's less available in terms of the ability to use it as currency, but it's available to be used in the devices you like, such as your iPhones or iPads or computers. So, Federal Reserve notes are not lawful money, they're not even dollars. Title 12, Section 411 of the United States Code says Federal Reserve notes, and you can, to be issued at the discretion of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, but it says they, meaning the Federal Reserve notes, shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand. So if they're supposed to be redeemed on lawful money, they're obviously not the lawful money. And like I said, if you look at the United States Code, they're not the lawful money. The lawful money are the gold and silver coins. And it says they shall be redeemed at the Treasury Department of the United States and the City of Washington, District of Columbia, or at any Federal Reserve Bank. Someday, I'd like to get 1 million people in Dallas surrounding the Federal Reserve Bank. Each of you holding at least $1 or whatever you have in paper notes, demanding our lawful money. I would love to scare Robert Fisher, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, out of his shoes. I would love for him to go running, scared, because he has ripped us off. Yes?
Tom, the last time we attempted to do that, they escorted us out of the Federal Reserve banks with guns.
That is correct. The last time that we attempted to do, the last time that Wayne was with me, they did that. I go every year. I have to do that to preserve standing on some lawsuits I have going, but I go every year to try to make a demand for lawful money. A few times I've brought more than one witness with me. When I bring a group of people, they don't like it too much. But I tell you this, if the Hispanic high school children could muster up a couple 100,000 or 1 million kids a few years ago in downtown Dallas, by George, I should be able to get the American people to wake up to demand the money that's theirs to do the same thing. We have a right, both statutorily and constitutionally, to receive lawful money. The law is clear. You can look this up at uscode.house.gov, Title 12, Section 401. You can read it yourself. Federal Reserve notes are to be redeemable and lawful money on demand. Federal Reserve Bank will walk you out. But if you get 1 million people demanding it, they don't have enough bullets or guns. What is a Federal Reserve note? It's a private bank note. It's not constitutionally authorized money. The Constitution only authorizes the issuance of gold and silver coin. It doesn't allow for the emission of paper tender. But again, the government will argue, well, the government's not issuing it, it's a private bank that's issuing it. What's interesting is, I know this is a little tiny to read, so I've got some bullets here, is The Treasury's website, we have forced it into a box over the last several years. I've been up and testified before the Treasury, before the IRS, and before committees on Congress, and we forced them into a couple of things. And one is, the beginning of this talks about the legal tender status, and it quotes Title 31, Section 5103, which says, United States coins and currencies, parentheses, including Federal Reserve notes, close parentheses, shall be legal tender for all debts, public and private, da 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 da. The next paragraph down says, there is, however, no federal statute mandating that a private business, a person, or an organization must accept currency or coins as for payment of goods and or services. This means you get to choose the currency you use and accept. Now this is critical, because the other part of Treasury, namely the Internal Revenue Service, would like you to believe that you always have to accept Federal Reserve notes and you have to treat them or anything that you receive at the value of those, face value of those notes. And I will submit to you that is not true. You have the right to choose and use any form of legal tender currency you want. And those gold and silver coins have been declared both lawful money and legal tender. And they're in the law today. Congress has specified that a Federal Reserve Bank must hold collateral equal in value to the Federal Reserve notes that the banks receives. This collateral is chiefly gold certificates. Now I bring this up again because this is what I was going back to. They have to have collateral in value to the Federal Reserve notes, not to the electrons. Hence, why there's only $42 billion in paper note value out there. Yet there's $114 trillion in obligations, and there's $14 trillion in immediate deficit debt, but there's only $42 billion in face value of those notes that they have assets for. And what I'm afraid of is this. I'm afraid of that foreign governments such as the Japanese and Chinese understand the legal requirements of our monetary system better than we do. And they themselves are going to leverage that fact to take the assets and property that belongs to us, we the people here in America, and they're going to take it away from us. When we the people should offer up as a sacrifice the bankers who committed this fraud against us to the Japanese and the Chinese and let them handle how they want to punish them for deceiving them. Because we the people did not authorize this event to happen. We the people never made a constitutional amendment to allow this. So something unconstitutional is void. And if it's void, it has no legal standing. So we have to wake up to the fact that we the people are being deceived by a dishonest cartel who are basically running the government. Now what's also interesting here is, I just quoted a moment ago, Title 12, Section 411, Federal Reserve notes shall be redeemable and lawful money on demand. Well, this would meet the requirements of Section 411, but the government would also take over the assets which would equal the value. So again, the government's thinking that the Federal Reserve Bank has enough gold or silver to cover the notes face value that they've issued. And like I said, I think they do. I don't know this for a fact because David Walker, who used to be the comptroller of the currency, back before the crash happened, started going around the country, started getting on 60 Minutes and other programs trying to warn people of what was going to happen, which did happen in the financial collapse. But he was looking at it from a different aspect. He could no longer balance the books. He said, I can't balance the books here. I don't have enough hard assets to cover these notes. He ended up resigning and joined the Pete Peterson group, and they put out a film called IOU USA. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but you can go rent it from Netflix and take a look at it. But he understood the problem. He was an honorable man. He tried to warn us. We, the people, didn't understand the complexity of the problem. And so he ended up resigning. He did the right thing because he didn't want to be responsible for this mess, even though he tried to warn us. Federal Reserve notes are not dollars. They have no value for themselves. Federal Reserve notes are not redeemable in gold, silver, or any other commodity. They receive no backing of anything. This has been the case since 1933. Well, that's technically not true either. Because in 1933, they were no longer redeemable for gold, but up through 64, at least from the American public point of view, we were allowed to redeem for silver. After that, of course, that disappeared. The notes have no value for themselves. Well, this is interesting because the Supreme Court had said in U.S. v. Marigold that Congress appertained rather to the execution of important trust invested by the Constitution and to the obligation to fulfill that trust on the part of the government, namely the trust and duty of creating and maintaining a uniform and pure metallic standard of value throughout the Union. The power of coining money and of regulating its value was delegated to Congress by the Constitution for the very purpose as assigned by the framers of that instrument of creating and preserving the uniformity and purity of such standard of value. If the medium which the government was authorized to create and establish could immediately be expelled and substituted by one it had neither created, estimated, nor authorized, well, obviously, it doesn't create the Federal Reserve notes, it doesn't estimate them, but it did authorize that the bank was allowed to create them. So it's got some of these possessions. One possessing no intrinsic value. Wouldn't the government just say Federal Reserve notes have no value, so therefore they don't have any intrinsic value? Then the power conferred by the Constitution would be useless, wholly fruitless of every end it was designed to accomplish. Now you may be thinking, this is an old case from 1850. And I know there's a lot of arguments, oh, those old cases are no good. But this case was cited in International Bank Court in 2003. It was cited for a slightly different reason, but still stands affirming Congress's constitutional responsibility to maintain the pure metallic standard value. The case was brought up under the Commerce Clause. It wasn't brought up under the Monetary Clause, but they quoted this in 2003. It's part of the decision. So the judges understand what the monetary laws are really supposed to be. The Constitution is clear on it. The statutes are clear on it. And yet, we the people are ignorant. The legislature knows the truth. From that report that Donald Reagan delivered to Congress on March 31st, 1982, it says on page 243 of Volume 2, the present monetary arrangements of the United States are unconstitutional, even anti-constitutional from top to bottom. Tom Selgus didn't say that. This came out of the legal research from the Department of Treasury and the Congressional Research Service that the Federal Reserve note system is unconstitutional, even anti-constitutional from top to bottom. Within 6 months of that, they reinstituted the lawful money laws. March of 82, September of 82, they put a stopgap measure in and introduced silver coins. And then in July of 85, they had the silver dollar that we see today. In December of 85, the gold dollars were then added. So since 1985, there have been gold and silver coins that have been minted by the United States as lawful money, legal tender, that they forgot to tell you about.